When the Dominion arrived, they didn't come with speeches. They came with contracts. The alien empire called itself the Carthage Sovereignty, a civilization that had perfected conquest so thoroughly it no longer required open war. Their ships filled Earth's skies like a second atmosphere, blotting out sunlight with smooth metallic hulls that reflected oceans and continents beneath them. They offered integration. Humanity refused. The orbital strikes lasted 12 minutes. Military satellites were erased. Air defenses collapsed. Major governments surrendered before the third wave of precision bombardment reached their capitals. The Carthages did not destroy cities unless necessary. Infrastructure was valuable. Population was valuable. Labor was valuable. Within 6 months, Earth was designated a Tier 4 resource world. Humans were categorized as biologically resilient, adaptable, and physically capable under extended strain. Perfect for industrial expansion across newly conquered sectors. They shipped millions off-world. Mining colonies near unstable stars. Shipyards carved into asteroid fields. Planetary construction projects under crushing gravity. Humans hauled, welded, calculated, endured. The Carthages believed they understood the species quickly. Emotionally volatile. Tribal. Physically durable but strategically divided. They complied under overwhelming force. What the sovereignty didn't understand was this. Humans adapt fastest under pressure. The first year of enslavement looked like submission. Productivity rose 32%. Human laborers learned alien engineering systems. Memorized maintenance cycles. Observed security rotations. Understood power grid architecture. Studied atmospheric processors, reactor cores, fleet logistics. They asked questions? Not rebellious questions. Curious ones. How does this stabilizer prevent overload? Why route energy through this node instead of direct core feed? The Carthage supervisors found it efficient to answer. After all, a knowledgeable worker makes fewer mistakes. On the mining world of Kultar 9, a human foreman named Elias Carter began reorganizing labor shifts. Productivity increased again. Output efficiency improved beyond projections. The Carthages rewarded him with supervisory authority. They never considered why a conquered species would optimize its captor's infrastructure. They assumed survival instinct. They were partially correct. Across dozens of systems, humans formed informal groups. Study circles. Skill exchanges. Physical conditioning routines disguised as fatigue management exercises. They trained under gravity 1.6 times Earth standard. They ran endurance circuits between shifts. They learned alien language fluently. They mapped structural weaknesses inside the very facilities they built. 10 years passed. The Carthages expanded deeper into the Orion Arm, powered largely by human labor. Then an anomaly appeared in internal reports. Human injury rates were decreasing despite harsher assignments. Strength metrics were rising. Cognitive performance under stress exceeded baseline. It was noted, but not prioritized. After all, slaves improving efficiency was a benefit. The sovereignty did not realize something fundamental. Humans weren't just surviving forced labor. They were adapting to it. Every load lifted increased bone density. Every long shift improved endurance. Every technical manual studied built strategic awareness. They weren't breaking. They were conditioning. And the day the Carthages would finally understand that truth would be the day their empire cracked. By year 15, human labor had become indispensable. The Carthage sovereignty relied on them for heavy industrial expansion. Alien species under Dominion rule often lacked the physical resilience for extreme environments. Humans didn't. They endured radiation-heavy shipyards, high-gravity mining platforms, sub-zero construction zones, and they learned everything. At Shipyard Complex Varos 12, humans assembled Carthage war cruisers piece by piece. They installed reactor cores, calibrated shield matrices, routed weapon conduits. Under supervision. Always under supervision. But supervision breeds familiarity. Humans began predicting system failures before Karthik's engineers detected them. They optimized structural reinforcement layouts, suggested efficiency improvements in docking algorithms. The sovereignty logged this as useful compliance behavior. They missed the pattern. Across multiple systems, humans began requesting transfers to different sectors: engineering, logistics, power regulation, AI maintenance. The requests were granted. Why deny productive labor? What the Karthiks didn't realize was that humanity was distributing knowledge like a neural network. One human learned shield harmonics. Another studied fleet navigation. Another mapped supply chain vulnerabilities. They communicated quietly during rest cycles. Encoded patterns hidden in harmless data logs. Workout rhythms tapped against metal bunks that translated into mathematical sequences. The sovereignty believed they had suppressed human militaries. They hadn't eliminated human coordination. Meanwhile, physical conditioning intensified. Labor under high gravity built muscle density beyond Earth norms. Harsh atmospheres strengthened respiratory efficiency. Long shifts under pressure improved mental endurance. Human children born in off-world colonies adapted even faster. Stronger. Faster. More resistant to environmental extremes. The Karthiks called them industrial variants. They did not realize they were witnessing forced evolution. Then came the audit. A sovereignty intelligence officer flagged unusual cross-sector synchronization among human labor rotations. Productivity spikes aligning across multiple systems. Too aligned. He recommended minor restrictions on inter-facility communication. The recommendation was filed. Delayed. Empire bureaucracy favored efficiency over paranoia. By year 20, humans were involved in constructing nearly 40% of new Dominion warships. They knew reactor ignition sequences. They knew shield cycling delays. They knew fleet jump recalibration windows. They built the Empire's strength. And in doing so, they memorized every weakness. The Karthiks believed humanity had accepted its role. But humans have a cultural memory older than empires. Oppression doesn't erase identity. It compresses it. And compression builds pressure. The sovereignty had mistaken silence for surrender. It was preparation. The rebellion did not begin with a scream. It began with a shutdown. At exactly 0300 Sovereignty Standard Time, across 19 systems, reactor cores inside newly commissioned warships failed to initialize. Simultaneously, backup systems activated and immediately looped into containment cycles. Fleet Command flagged it as a software anomaly. Then orbital defense grids flickered offline. Then long-range communications experienced cascading interference. Not destruction. Interruption. Confusion spread faster than panic. At Varos 12 shipyard, Karthik's overseers attempted manual overrides. Human technicians complied. They opened access panels. They stepped aside. And then they acted. Precision strikes. Targeted disabling blows. Tools turned into weapons. Not chaotic violence, coordinated execution. Across mining colonies, humans seized control rooms. On transport hubs, they rerouted security drones. On planetary grids, they isolated sovereignty command nodes. Every action synchronized to the same timestamp. For 20 years, humans had mapped the nervous system of the Empire. Now they pressed on the right arteries. The most devastating strike came from within the fleet. Human-built cruisers received encrypted signals embedded years earlier inside maintenance subroutines. Shield matrices inverted polarity. Weapon targeting systems recalibrated toward Karthik's command vessels. The Sovereignty's own ships turned against them. Panic erupted. The Karthiks had conquered hundreds of species. None had ever waited this long. None had ever trained under captivity. Human labor colonies did not riot. They mobilized. High-gravity conditioning produced soldiers capable of overpowering alien guards twice their size. Engineering knowledge allowed rapid sabotage of security failsafes. Within 6 hours, 19 systems were contested. Within 12, sovereignty supply chains collapsed. Within 24, 3 major fleet hubs were neutralized. The Karthiks finally understood. Humans had not been broken. They had been forged. And now the Empire faced something it had never calculated. An enemy that knew its entire infrastructure from the inside. By the third day of uprising, the Karthik sovereignty lost 38% of its active fleet. Not destroyed in battle. Disabled from within. Human forces didn't chase fleeing ships. They targeted logistics. Fuel depots. Navigation arrays. Command relays. They understood that wars are not won by firepower alone, but by control of systems. The sovereignty attempted retaliation against Earth. They discovered something terrifying. Earth was no longer dependent. During 20 years of forced labor, humans had smuggled technology designs back through encoded transmissions. Hidden inside routine efficiency reports. Embedded in supply manifests. Earth had rebuilt quietly. Orbital defenses powered up as Karthik's remnants approached. Human-built ships, improved, redesigned, optimized, waited in formation. The Empire had trained its own destroyers. The final transmission from Karthik's high command reached every system. How? The human response was simple. You gave us access. Silence followed. The sovereignty had believed labor created weakness. But labor under observation creates mastery. They had forced humanity into the heart of their empire. And humanity had learned every heartbeat. Within a week, the Karthiks formally surrendered core territories. Within a month, enslaved species across the Orion Arm declared independence, supported by human strategic guidance. The empire did not fall in flames. It unraveled in realization. They had enslaved a species defined by adaptation. They thought they were extracting value. They were cultivating resistance. And when historians across the galaxy later analyzed the collapse of the Karthik sovereignty, one conclusion became standard doctrine. Never force humans to build your future. Because they are always building their own.